The hum of the coffee shop was a dull roar, a chaotic blend of clinking mugs, murmured conversations, and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine. I sat in the corner, my laptop open, scrolling through Reddit threads in r/relationships, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. The post I'd been drafting for weeks stared back at me, a raw confession I wasn't sure I had the courage to share. My phone buzzed on the table, snapping me out of my trance. It was a text from Ethan. "We need to talk. Call me when you're free." My stomach twisted. Ethan's messages were rarely so direct, and something about the tone felt off, like a storm brewing just out of sight. I ignored it, my eyes drifting back to the Reddit post. I'd titled it "AITA for refusing to forgive my husband after he betrayed me." The cursor blinked, mocking my hesitation. I wasn't ready to spill my story to strangers, not yet. But I knew I'd have to face Ethan sooner or later. I closed my laptop and slipped it into my bag, the weight of the day pressing against my chest. I'd been working remotely as a freelance graphic designer for a small YouTube channel, creating thumbnails and overlays for a true crime creator who was obsessed with dramatic titles like "She Disappeared Without a Trace" and "He Thought He Got Away with It." The irony wasn't lost on me. My life was starting to feel like one of those clickbait stories, complete with a villain I never saw coming. As I stepped out into the crisp autumn air, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Ethan. "I'm at the house. Where are you?" The urgency in his words sent a chill down my spine. I quickened my pace, the city streets blurring as my mind raced. What did he want to talk about? Why now? Our house, a modest two-story we'd bought 3 years ago after scraping together every penny we had, was a 20-minute walk from the coffee shop. Ethan and I had been together for 7 years, married for 4, and while our relationship wasn't perfect, no marriage is, I'd always told myself, it was ours. We'd built a life together, or so I thought. The house was our pride, a symbol of stability after years of renting cramped apartments. I'd spent months decorating it, curating every detail from the sage green throw pillows to the framed prints I'd designed myself. Ethan had always been less invested in the aesthetics, but he'd humored me, nodding along as I rambled about color palettes and furniture layouts. Looking back, I should have noticed how his indifference extended beyond decor, creeping into the cracks of our marriage. When I reached the house, the front door was slightly ajar, which was unusual. Ethan was meticulous about locking up, a habit from his days as a paralegal handling sensitive client files. I pushed the door open, my heart pounding. "Ethan?" I called, stepping into the foyer. The house was quiet, too quiet, the kind of stillness that feels like it's holding its breath. I kicked off my shoes and padded into the living room, where I found him sitting on the couch, his phone in hand, his face unreadable. He looked up as I entered, his hazel eyes cold in a way I'd never seen before. "We need to talk," he said, his voice flat, like he was reading from a script. "Okay," I said, dropping my bag on the floor and sitting across from him in the armchair. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. "What's going on?" He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, and for a moment, he didn't speak. The silence was excruciating, each second stretching into eternity. Finally, he said, "I'm done, Nora. I want a divorce." The words hit like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I stared at him, waiting for the punchline, for the moment he'd crack a smile and say he was joking. But his expression didn't waver. "What?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm done," he repeated, his tone sharper now, almost impatient. "I've been thinking about this for a while. I don't love you anymore, and I'm not staying in a marriage that's dead. Oh, and I sold the house. The deal's already in motion, so you'll need to find somewhere else to live. For a moment, the world stopped. Sold the house? Our house? The one we'd poured our savings into, the one I'd made a home? My mind scrambled to process his words, but all I could feel was the rage bubbling up, hot and unstoppable. You sold the house? I asked, my voice trembling but steady. Without telling me? Yeah, he said, leaning back with a smirk that made my skin crawl. It's done. I got a good price for it, and I'm moving on. With Lily. Lily. The name was a knife to the gut. I'd heard it before, tossed around casually in conversations about his new co-worker at the law firm. Late-night meetings, weekend conferences, the sudden uptick in his cologne use, it all clicked into place. I'd suspected something for months, but I'd buried my doubts, convincing myself I was paranoid. Reddit threads in r/surviving infidelity had warned me about the signs, but I'd scrolled past them, refusing to believe Ethan could be that person. Now, here he was, proving me wrong in the cruelest way possible. You're moving on with Lily, I repeated, my voice eerily calm. And you think you can just sell our house and walk away? It's not our house anymore, he said, his smirk widening. It's mine to sell, and I did. You'll get your half of the money, minus what I need to start over. Be grateful I'm not leaving you with nothing. The audacity of it, the sheer entitlement, lit a fire in me. I stood, my hands clenched into fists. You don't get to decide what I'm grateful for, Ethan. And you don't get to sell something that's legally mine without my consent. His smirk faltered, just for a second, but he recovered quickly. Good luck fighting it, he said, standing and grabbing his jacket from the couch. The buyer's already signed. It's a done deal. I'm staying at Lily's tonight, so figure out your next move. He walked out, the door slamming behind him, leaving me alone in the house that suddenly felt like a stranger's. I sank back into the armchair, my mind racing. How could he think he could sell the house without my signature? The deed was in both our names. I'd made sure of it when we bought the place, a precaution I'd taken after reading too many horror stories on Reddit about spouses getting screwed over. Ethan had always been careless with details, signing paperwork without reading it, trusting me to handle the boring stuff. That carelessness was about to bite him. I pulled out my phone and called Maya, my best friend and a real estate lawyer who'd helped us close on the house. She picked up on the second ring. Nora? What's up? You sound weird. Ethan just told me he's divorcing me, I said, my voice shaking but resolute. And he claims he sold the house. Without my consent. There was a long pause, followed by a sharp intake of breath. He did what? Maya's voice was a mix of shock and fury. Please tell me you're joking. I'm not, I said, pacing the living room now. He says the deal's done, and he's moving in with someone named Lily. Can he even do that? Sell the house without me? No way, Maya said firmly. If the deed is in both your names, he can't sell without your signature. Any buyer who thinks they've got a valid contract is in for a rude awakening. Do you have the deed handy? Yeah, it's in the safe upstairs, I said. I'll grab it. Good. Send me a photo of it, and I'll start digging into this. If Ethan's trying to pull something shady, we'll shut it down. In the meantime, don't engage with him. Let me handle the legal side. I hung up, a strange calm settling over me. Ethan thought he'd won, that he could dismantle my life and walk away with a smug grin. But he'd underestimated me. I wasn't the naive wife he thought I was, and I wasn't going to let him take everything I'd worked for. Upstairs, I opened the safe and pulled out the deed, my hand steady as I snapped a photo and sent it to Maya. As I waited for her response, I opened my laptop and logged back into Reddit. The r/relationships thread was still open, but I didn't feel like posting anymore. Instead, I navigated to r/legal advice and started a new thread. Husband claims he sold our house without my consent. What are my rights? I laid out the situation in vague terms, careful not to reveal too much, and hit submit. Within minutes, responses started pouring in, strangers offering advice and encouragement. Get a lawyer ASAP, one user wrote. If the deed is in your name, he's screwed, said another. Their words fueled my resolve, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. Maya called back an hour later, her voice brimming with confidence. The deed is solid, she said. Both your names are on it, and there's no way Ethan could have sold the house legally without your signature. I've already contacted a colleague who specializes in real estate fraud. We're going to notify the buyer that the sale is invalid and demand proof of any funds Ethan might have received. If he's taken a deposit, he's in deep trouble. What kind of trouble? I asked, a spark of satisfaction igniting in my chest. Fraud, for starters, Maya said. If he misrepresented himself as the sole owner, he could face civil and criminal penalties. Plus, the buyer could sue him for breach of contract. This is a mess of his own making, Nora. All you need to do is stay calm and let us handle it. I thanked her and hung up, my mind already shifting to the next steps. Ethan thought he could blindside me, but he didn't know I'd been preparing for a moment like this without even realizing it. Years of scrolling through Reddit, reading stories of betrayal and revenge, had taught me one thing: knowledge is power. And I was about to wield it like a weapon. The next morning, I woke to a flurry of notifications from Reddit. My r/legal advice post had blown up overnight, with dozens of users chiming in with advice, resources, and even a few "you go, girl" comments that made me smile. One user, a self-proclaimed real estate agent, suggested I check the local property records to see if Ethan had filed anything shady. Another recommended installing a security camera in case he tried to mess with the house. I made a mental note to order a Ring doorbell as soon as possible. I spent the day working on a new thumbnail for the YouTube channel, a dramatic design with bold red text and a shadowy figure in the background. The creator had asked for something extra clickable, and I poured my frustration into the project, channeling my anger into every pixel. When I sent the file, the creator replied with a string of fire emojis and a message: "This is gold. You're killing it, Nora." The praise felt hollow. Killing it? I was barely holding it together. That evening, Ethan texted again: "We need to talk about the house. Meet me at the diner on 5th tomorrow at noon." I stared at the message, debating whether to respond. Maya had warned me not to engage, but the part of me that still wanted answers, the part that wanted to look him in the eye and see if he felt even a shred of guilt, won out. I typed a quick reply: "Fine. Noon." The diner was a greasy spoon we'd frequented early in our relationship, a place where we'd shared late-night fries and dreamed about our future. Now, it felt like a battleground. I arrived early, claiming a booth in the back and ordering a coffee to steady my nerves. When Ethan walked in, he looked different, cockier, somehow, like he'd already won. He slid into the booth across from me, his hands folded on the table. "Let's make this quick," he said. "The house sale is moving forward, and I need you to sign off on it. I'll give you 30% of the profits, and we can both walk away clean." I stared at him, incredulous. 30%? You think you can bribe me into signing away my home? You don't have the authority to sell it, Ethan. The deed is in both our names. His jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. You're making this harder than it needs to be. The buyer's already paid a deposit. If you try to fight this, you'll look like the bad guy, and you'll end up with nothing. I leaned forward, my voice low and steady. You're the one who's going to end up with nothing. I've already spoken to a lawyer. The sale is invalid, and if you've taken any money from the buyer, you're looking at fraud charges. So why don't you tell me what you've done with the deposit? His smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of panic. You're bluffing, he said, but his voice wavered. Try me, I replied, holding his gaze. I've got the deed, the lawyer, and a paper trail. What do you have, Ethan? A girlfriend who thinks you're a big shot because you lied to her? He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This isn't over, he snapped, then stormed out, leaving me alone with my coffee and a growing sense of triumph. I'd rattled him, and it felt good. Back at home, I installed the Ring doorbell and checked the property records online, just as the Reddit user had suggested. Sure enough, there was a pending sale listing for our address, but it was flagged as under review due to a discrepancy in the paperwork. Maya confirmed it later that day. Ethan had forged my signature on the sale agreement, a move so reckless it bordered on delusional. He's digging his own grave, she said. We've notified the buyer, and they're furious. They want their deposit back, and they're threatening to sue Ethan if he doesn't comply. What happens if he can't pay them back? I asked. Then he's looking at a civil lawsuit, at minimum, Maya said. And if we can prove he knowingly committed fraud, the DA might get involved. Either way, he's not walking away from this unscathed. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal maneuvers and emotional highs and lows. I threw myself into my work, designing a series of thumbnails for a YouTube video titled, "The Betrayal That Shocked Everyone." The irony wasn't lost on me, but the work kept me grounded, a reminder that I could still create something beautiful amid the chaos. At night, I'd scroll through Reddit, reading stories in r/am I the asshole and r/pro-revenge, drawing inspiration from people who'd faced similar betrayals and come out on top. One post, about a woman who'd turned her ex's lies against him in court, stuck with me. Don't just get even, she'd written. Get ahead. That became my mantra. Ethan's texts grew more desperate as the week went on. You're ruining my life, Nora. Can't we work this out? One read. Lily's freaking out, and I'm broke. Please. I didn't respond, but I saved every message, forwarding them to Maya as evidence of his state of mind. When he showed up at the house unannounced one evening, banging on the door and demanding to be let in, the Ring doorbell captured every word. This is my house too, he shouted, his voice slurred, like he'd been drinking. You can't do this to me. I stayed upstairs, my heart racing but my resolve firm, and called Maya. She advised me to file for a restraining order if he kept it up, and I agreed. Ethan was unraveling, and I wasn't going to let him drag me down with him. The turning point came a week later, when Maya called with news that made my heart soar. The buyers rescinded the sale, she said. They've confirmed Ethan took a $50,000 deposit, but he can't produce the funds. They're suing him for breach of contract and fraud, and they've agreed to testify if we pursue criminal charges. Nora, this is huge. Huge how? I asked, barely daring to hope. It means Ethan's out of moves, she said. He's got no money, no leverage, and no way to fight the divorce proceedings. I've already drafted the paperwork, and I'm recommending we push for a fault-based divorce citing his fraud and infidelity. You'll keep the house, and he'll be lucky if he avoids jail time. I hung up, a grin spreading across my face. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. Ethan had thought he could destroy me, but he'd only destroyed himself. I opened Reddit and posted an update to my r/legal advice thread, thanking everyone for their support and detailing the latest developments without revealing too much. The responses were overwhelming, hundreds of upvotes, comments cheering me on, and even a few DMs from users who'd been through similar experiences. "You're an inspiration," one wrote. "Don't let him take another second of your peace." I saved that message, a reminder of why I was fighting. The divorce proceedings moved quickly after that. Ethan, realizing he had no leverage, signed the papers without a fight, though not without a final attempt to guilt me. "You're heartless," he texted the day he moved out, his belongings packed into a U-Haul while I watched from the window. "I hope you're happy ruining my life." I didn't respond. Happiness wasn't about ruining him, it was about reclaiming myself. With Ethan gone, the house felt like mine again. I spent weeks redecorating, painting the walls a soft lavender and replacing his ugly recliner with a sleek mid-century sofa I'd found on Craigslist. I started posting about my journey on Reddit, using a throwaway account to share snippets of my story in r/pro-revenge and r/surviving infidelity. The response was staggering, thousands of upvotes, comments begging for more details, and even a few YouTubers reaching out to ask if they could narrate my story on their channels. I declined, not ready to go public, but the idea planted a seed. What if I told my story myself? I'd been freelancing for YouTube creators for years, but I'd never considered starting my own channel. The thought was daunting, filming, editing, dealing with trolls, but also exhilarating. I spent nights researching, watching tutorials on lighting and scripting, and reading Reddit threads in r/newtubers for tips on growing a channel. My niche was clear, real-life stories of betrayal and redemption, inspired by my own experience but expanded to include other stories from Reddit and beyond. I'd call it Outsmarted, a nod to how I'd turned Ethan's lies against him. I filmed my first video in the living room, the lavender walls a soft backdrop as I sat on my new sofa, a mug of tea in hand. "Hey, everyone," I began, my voice shaky but determined. "My name's Nora, and this is the story of how my husband tried to destroy me, and how I fought back." I didn't script it, letting the words flow naturally as I recounted the betrayal, the legal battle, and the moment I realized I'd won. I edited the video using skills I'd honed as a freelancer, adding subtle music and text overlays to keep viewers hooked. When I uploaded it to YouTube, titled, "My Husband Sold Our House Behind My Back Betrayal and Revenge Story," I braced for the worst: trolls, criticism, or worse, silence. Instead, the video exploded. Within 48 hours, it had 10,000 views, hundreds of comments, and a flood of subscribers. "This is insane," one commenter wrote. "You're a badass, Nora." Another said, "Please make more. I'm obsessed with your story." The Reddit community I'd shared the link within r/pro-revenge drove even more traffic, and soon, my channel had 5,000 subscribers. I was stunned but energized, already planning my next video, a deep dive into another Reddit user's story of outsmarting a cheating spouse, with their permission. As my channel grew, so did my confidence. I started collaborating with other creators, narrating their stories and sharing tips on thumbnails and SEO. I posted regularly on Reddit, engaging with users in r/newtubers and r/YouTube to refine my strategy. My videos, optimized with clickbait titles like "She Thought She Could Steal My Life," she was wrong, and he lied to everyone. But I had the last laugh. Consistently hit 50,000 plus views, my channel climbing to 20,000 subscribers within months. The revenue from ads and Patreon was enough to quit freelancing, and for the first time, I felt financially secure without Ethan's income. But it wasn't just about the numbers. Telling my story, and others, gave me a sense of purpose I'd never known. Every comment from a viewer who'd survived a similar betrayal, every DM from someone inspired to leave a toxic relationship, reminded me why I'd started. I wasn't just reclaiming my house or my life. I was building a community, a space where people could find strength in shared experiences. A year later, my channel had 100,000 subscribers, and I'd moved to a new house, a bright, airy bungalow I'd bought with my YouTube earnings. The old house, with its memories of Ethan's betrayal, was sold on my terms, the profits funding my fresh start. I still posted on Reddit, now under my real account, sharing updates and advice for aspiring creators. My latest video, how I turned my worst moment into a thriving YouTube channel, was my most personal yet, a reflection on how far I'd come. It ended with a call to action. If you've ever been betrayed, don't let it define you. Tell your story, reclaim your power, and outsmart the people who tried to break you. As I sat in my new home, editing my next video with the city lights twinkling outside, I thought about Ethan. I'd heard through mutual friends that he was struggling, bouncing between jobs and living in a cramped apartment after Lily left him. Part of me felt a twinge of pity, but it was fleeting. He'd made his choices, and I'd made mine. My life was no longer his to ruin, it was mine to create, one video, one story, one victory at a time.